People, deluded. I'm back again. I've got the best duo since Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp, man. Alex, big up yourself. You're always part of the furniture here, and I appreciate your consistent support. I've got him here very early at the time of making this video, man. How you doing, my friend? We've got a decent amount to discuss.
We've got a lot to discuss. We are speaking post England's masterclass. Should we call it that?
Yeah, and this is why I said we're like Thierry Henry and Bergkamp, because that's the first thing I wanted to get into, man. I've offered my thoughts, but what did you think of it, man? Obviously, Saka's amazing, but yeah, what's your thoughts on the first game against Serbia?
I will say my quality of watching England compared to Arsenal is mostly complaining about Southgate over a pint. So rather than with Arsenal, I'm actually watching it properly. So please take my thoughts with a pinch of salt. But look, it's continued. It's the same issues that we've always had with Southgate, in my opinion, in that we set up like we're a mid-table team, even though we had the quality we have on the ball is unbelievable to me. Look, I thought the first half we actually came out really well. I thought midfield rotations were lovely. Obviously, Saka looked unbelievable, but we know that. But then what happens is I feel like we have one or two scares, and then we go, right, Pickford, start going long. We don't trust Stones on the ball. We don't trust Guehi on the ball, even though these are, I think Guehi is massively underrated, but John Stones is literally a world-class defender. If you don't want to trust John Stones to build up from the back for you, who do you trust? Genuine question, who do you trust? Kieran Trippier was annoying me in the way he was, basically, the way I saw it anyway, in build-up. He was playing with Guehi and Stones, and he'd be the sort of elbow. So he wasn't quite an option in build-up. He wasn't actually making himself available either between the lines. He was sort of hiding. And then when we were a bit further up the pitch, he wasn't quite creating the width in the same way that Saka was. He was sort of inside again. So just either way, I didn't feel it was functionally working. I thought the right side just completely carried us. Do you know what he was playing like? He was playing like those guys. Remember at school where you get put in the wrong position and you actively play not badly, but you don't use your left foot because you're like, I'm a right winger or whatever. Because you're like, I don't know, you don't shoot or whatever. It's just like, mate, come on. We know you're a professional football player. You have a left foot. But yeah, to be honest, I was 3 Guinnesses deep, so that's you can take all that with a pinch of salt.
What do you make of Philip Foden, man? I can't let Foden get away with this.
Look, I think basically England have 5 difference makers, and Foden isn't in that group. So I would say that is Bellingham, Kane, Saka, Rice, and Trent. I would say those 5 can, as a group, but also individually, not necessarily them scoring, but through their performances, turn us from a 1-1 to a 2-1 or wherever it might be, right? I think they've consistently proved it, and I think in an England shirt, they can do that. I don't think Phil Foden can do that for England. I don't think I've ever seen him do that. I think people call him, system player at Man City, whatever it is. I don't think it's that. It's just that the zones he likes to occupy, we have Jude Bellingham and Harry Kane in. So you're not going to get in there. Sorry, like you're just not. Like, he's a brilliant football player, but he's not at that level, in my opinion. I think any good international team, in the end, is going to have to sacrifice someone. The top level teams, France, Argentina. I think, for example, Argentina at the World Cup, if I recall correctly, they started out by putting everyone on the pitch, and then in the end they had to drop Lissandro because it wasn't working. Lissandro is a brilliant football player, but to make the rest of the team function, I think
just can't have everyone.
Lautaro came out the team and Di Maria came in. Lautaro's probably the better player at that point. In 2022, Di Maria's 47. Do you know what I mean? But it wasn't working. So you have to do it, right? It's okay. Like it's genuinely fine. Someone's gonna have to be the fall guy. And then what you do is support those 5 talents with base players around them. So for me, Phil Foden should have been the person keeping the width on the left instead of allowing it to be Kieran Trippier. But again, he's coming inside and trying to find those zones. Just stay out of them. Just stay out of them. And yes, you won't get the most out of Phil Foden, but what you will do is platform your 5 talents who do make a difference. So look, he wasn't brilliant, but I would argue he's stuck between a rock and a hard place where Southgate's saying, you're kind of one of my main players, but you're also, I'm not going to allow you full keys that you get at Man City. So you're somewhere in the middle, but you're not just playing a system role and supporting. I want you on the ball. So I think Southgate's put him in a weird position. Did he have a good game? No, I'm not making excuses, but I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to be. It's like the Gerrard and Lampard discussions from years ago. Gerrard Lampard's goals. It's just someone had to drop out. We never did that, and we suffered for it. And I think in this case, it's going to be Phil Foden.
It's a weird one, man, because I disagree when people say, "Oh, this player is a system player." Of course, there's systems in life that get the most out of footballers, but every player has a system, or like a system that gets the best out of them, and a system that's going to get the worst out of them. Where England's concerned, I kind of share what you're saying in that essentially it's just square pegs in round holes. I actually think we started well. I actually feel, although you could probably throw a blanket on how close our players were, I could see, Foden getting into pockets, Bellingham running in behind. I could see the evidence around playing Trent. I don't really think Trent in midfield is the angle for us. I think Foden's struggling because essentially he's an 8 and a 10, but he's barely played there. So I think he's going to look out of place. And also when you consider that he's never had to make the difference, he's never had to really shoulder responsibility for the country like Saka, or, you look at Saka for Arsenal, and this ain't Foden versus Saka. We've lived or died by Saka's performances, arguably excluding the last 2 years. I don't think Foden's had that luxury. And I think Cesc Fabregas was bang on the money when he spoke about that. And I feel, to be fair to Southgate, with the positions Trippier's taking up and obviously Declan Rice in the lone six, I think when you've got Trent and Foden and all these guys, he's tried to find a balancing act. But essentially, it's like you said, it's like one or two scares. We reverted back to type. There were some hairy moments. I think you're bang on the money about Gurhey. I think his performance went under the radar. I think there were some nervy moments from Stones, but generally did all right. I think Kane was isolated. And I don't know about you, but it looked like for me, Kane was carrying some sort of knock. I think he woke up a bit in the second half and won a lot of fouls. It's a joy to watch Saka. And I know Saka does that for Arsenal and it's very different, but I couldn't help but think, you know what, Mikel Arteta, I don't really see Saka getting to do this on a consistent basis for Arsenal. Look how he's cooking this left winger. Can we see that at our football club? But that's not a criticism. Moving away from England.
But just quickly on that, wouldn't you argue that he's very rarely put in that situation in the sense that with one fullback? I was shocked that Serbia left him.
No, that's my point. I mean, it comes with the territory, innit? Naturally, maybe it's because of how Serbia are playing or how England are playing. Saka's a marked man in the Premier League. There's about 10 players on top of him. So it's not a criticism of Arteta. It's just, I think sometimes people forget, because Saka has become a calculated, cerebral, consistent robot, that the man's got ability. And we're both on social media. Me and you both see it. The goalposts shift with Bukayo Saka every week. He's not entertaining. He doesn't move me. You can keep your entertainingness, and I want Saka to keep doing what he's doing. So yeah, man, it's just like it was just refreshing. Like, no, Saka can actually cook, guys. But you are right, man. You are right.
What is he? 27 GA and 24 starts or something.
Careful, they were saying start Cole Palmer over him. And it's not a disrespect to Cole Palmer. It's just, come on, man. Saka is one of our better players. Do you know what? Yeah, I actually fell quickly on the England thing. I think we're going to miss Marcus Rashford. I did think if we had Reece James and Marcus Rashford, obviously there's reasons for them not being in the squad, we'd look a bit better. I'm not convinced with Trent in midfield. I don't think he played bad apart from losing the ball, but there's a reason you're a world-class right back and not necessarily a world-class midfielder. Yes, you take up those regions, but I don't want to draw too much conclusions on one game in it. Like, even with Foden, if he's amazing in our next game, everybody changes their narrative. I want to move on to Arsenal though, man. I saw a glorious video you put out. Check it out, people, where you kind of alluded to how we can win the summer and things like that. Tell us a bit about that, man. What would be the perfect summer for Arsenal?
Well, I think there's a number of sort of off-field things that maybe we could touch on. So I think there's
touch on it all, man. Let us have it all.
Yeah. Well, so before we, I'm sure we want to talk about transfers, but I think there's definitely some work we can do at academy level. We could possibly go into that in terms of how we maximize on that. I think we all know that we've not quite reached the maximum level. We're not maximized that at all, I would suggest. I feel that there's stuff we can do off the field in terms of maximizing. This is more long-term stuff, like where the Cronkies want to take Arsenal. I'm sort of writing a video about this at the minute in terms of certain decisions. I've got a controversial opinion about Trossard I want to possibly bring up to you, but certain decisions around certain
I'm here
players,
for this. Make sure you remember that,
around certain players where you go, okay, if we want to stay at a certain level, that's fine. That player can stick around. But who are we competing with, and what those clubs do? How do we sort of retain our identity and accept that we're where we are, while also trying to compete with the Madrids, the Bayerns, the Barças, the whoever of the world? That's a genuine question. I think part of that might be looking into the the multi-club model, or just operating.
I've been very passionate about that. I don't know if we'll ever get that, but
I don't love it. By the way, I wish it wasn't allowed, but also if you can't beat them, join them, right?
Amen.
But but more sort of how we operate as a football club in terms of what we do with our talents and stuff, and how we move forward. I think we need to sort Arteta's contract. Sounds like that's being done, but obviously mainly it's on the pitch in terms of the talent. I think there is. I think there's always scenarios, right? And I think this summer, I don't know, obviously, because I'm not Edu to shock everyone. But I don't know. My sense is there's not a total plan A, as in a sense, in the same way that was last summer with Declan Rice.
It's more
I
of a
think Declan
fluid
Rice,
kind of system
I think
that we can
so.
react to stuff. Yeah.
And from everything we know, every time there's a transfer cycle, it's Benjamin Šeško or it's Vlahovic or it's Caicedo last January, or it's Mudryk or whatever. We seem to be aware that the club have a number of different strategies and avenues to go down. If you can't get this player, whatever. And I imagine what happens, I don't know this, is a lot of kind of scenario planning. Okay, well, if we can go and get this player, that would mean that fills in this part of our jigsaw, in which case we go after that player. If we can go and get this player done, if that agent can talk to us, whatever, then that means we can go and pull out this bit of business, whatever it might be. And I feel like we're probably running through a sort of a sense of a load of scenarios. So, for example, with Šeško, I imagine we thought that's a really talented player that we don't have, that raises probably the floor of our squad. We probably need one more in probably the wide areas, I would suggest, and that could be insert your favorite talent. Your Rashfords, your Leaus, some people like Isak out wide, etc., etc. You go and do that alongside a Benjamin Šeško, and that would probably be raising the floor. If you can't get a Šeško, okay, do you go after an Osimhen and then maybe a prospect winger because you spent a bit more in the number 9 position? Do you know what I mean? So I imagine there's scenario planning. For me, I think about it a lot more on the field in terms of what skills we need to add in every position. Okay, what are we missing? What we're missing in the forward lines, and I've said it 100 times, I've probably said it to you on this channel. We've got a list of skills that we're missing in the forward line. We saw that shot from Benjamin Šeško yesterday, and everyone went, we don't have that. We literally don't have that, and it's so consistently. But also in the midfield, there's certain skills we're missing. I think we're missing certain versatility in the build-up and stuff. So I think, for me, I think about it skills-wise, what we're missing skills-wise, and then how you actually solve that, I think, is down to scenarios and down to like, right, okay, if we can go get that player, then this, then whatever.
How do you feel about Arsenal's transfer window going forward? Because I think you're bang on the money. There's really nothing I can add on that naturally. And I big up Arsenal for being competent. I think there's like an A list of targets. If it was white and black as we want this player, we can go get this player. But we have to be fluid. As you know, players that might be available, there might be a change of heart and vice versa. Obviously, in terms of outgoings, it's very touchy. But what do you feel like is the minimum Arsenal could afford to do? The striker, it feels that with Kai Havertz's form, and I don't know how you feel on it. I like Kai Havertz. I like what you're doing. I do believe maybe us Arsenal fans, we overstate the need for a striker because we got 91 Premier League goals and over 100 when you consider everything else. And, Kai Havertz's form has probably tipped the balance for Arsenal to be a bit more comfortable. Equally, I do like something we've done in the last 2-3 years, in that in previous years before Arteta, we would just sign, like if we needed a striker, which you could argue we do now, and we don't get the Sescos and insert, like you said, any talent, there'd be a scenario where we would just sign someone just for the sake of it, or to an ignorant fan, it would appear like that. Now under Arteta, for rightly or wrongly, we'll just say, you know what, there's solutions in-house, or we'll find another way around such. I think Sesco was a bit of a twofold. I think it was almost a unicorn, and like you said, he's got areas to his game that we don't have. He's young, he can get better, he's impressionable, he's 21 years of age, he comes in without necessarily disrupting Kai Havertz. But do you feel like we are, how do I ask you this? Do you feel like we're over exaggerating the need for a forward? Because on one hand, if Kai Havertz's form continues and the rest of the players score, we can keep going. But on the other hand, it's not an assurance that Kai is necessarily going to do that. And I'm sure you would agree in that it's weird because we will score goals because the last 2 years we've scored goals. But apart from Bukayo Saka, who can you really throw your hat on in August and say, you know what, you are going to be there in August? I mean, May of the next season. So where you at with that?
I think about, I hear that. And also you're right to point out the last 2 seasons we've broken our goals record in the Premier League. So it's I don't think that's a skill we're missing. But again, you use the word, there's solutions. And that's how I think about it. So I go, right, okay, we've got Kai Havertz at number 9. That to me isn't a line leady, channel runny, aerial winning sort of, ball striking type centre forward. That's more of a link up, 1-2, platform your other players. Someone who's more of maybe a target, but someone who can sort of you play off, is a platformer, really. Does that mean you then have to go and sign a 9 who does that? Well, maybe you can find that out wide. And that's when you look to the market. For me, I always think about it in terms of solutions and skills and what don't we have? And we saw the club say to the Athletic, and supposedly that should be pretty well sourced. They felt they were missing a level of X factor. Does that mean you have to go and sign a 9? Not necessarily. It could be a winger, it could be a left winger, whatever. So then I look to the market and I go, right, okay, let's say Alexander Isak. You go, okay, that's someone who the club feel that they can go and get that done. Well, that's an incredible level. Actually, let's use Šeško because that's kind of off the table and people will get, oh, I don't want Isak or whatever. Šeško's off the table. So let's use him as an example. Šeško, he was someone who could bring you a different level of transitional quality, because I think if you watch him for Leipzig, he's once he turns you in terms of his top speed, I think he's like Mbappe's top speed at one point. When I was watching, I didn't feel he was a massively quick accelerator, but once he got going, because he's just so big,
once he gets in stride, he's like a horse.
He's so tall. His stride pattern's massive. So so he could have bought us that. And then the sort of the ball striking, his hang time in terms of his aerial stuff is unbelievable. Though I would say he was misdirecting a lot of his headers when I was watching him. So he's bringing different stuff to Kai Havertz. And then I'd be looking out wide and I'd be saying, okay, feels that we've got a very different profile of 9. If Reece and Eddie leave, you look at the group and you go, okay, we've got Trossard, we've got Jesus, and maybe then you miss more of a creative winger. So then I'd be looking at someone like a Nico Williams, and I'd be saying, I think because Nico Williams, from what I've watched again, is a lot more get to the byline, whipping across, can play both sides. That's probably useful for both sides. It's a £42 million, I think, or something release clause. So then that jigsaw, you see what I mean? You fill in the sort of gaps and you make sense of it. You go, okay, we've got versatility both sides. We've added a different style of 9, etc. I look at what we have right now, and there's a skills gap and different ways you could fill it. That's one way, or you can fill it in other ways. But I agree with sort of what you're saying in that the skills gap, to me, when people say a number 9 or, Arsenal need a number 9, or the byword of that is essentially Arsenal need more goals. And I don't agree with that. I think we need different solutions, which is what we're missing. We are the skills gap in terms of what we have, let's say, in our midfield at everyone's absolute peak is a lot smaller than the skills gap we have in our forward areas. We don't have a number of things that I would like in our forward areas. So, and how you do that, not to sound like I'm sitting on the fence, is up to you. And it will depend on who is out there in the market. But I don't think there is the Rice type signing who solves everything, all your problems in one fell swoop. I don't think there is that. So it's going to be a bit more of a jigsaw.
And that's where it's a bit of a techie situation, and one where I'm happy I'm not Mikel Arteta, because it's not you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You have to find that, that balance of, not disrupting the squad, but bringing in absolutely quality players, whether that is simply put people who are better than what we have, or as you said, different solutions. In an ideal world for me, it would be another striker and another winger. I am quite fluid in that, okay, in the sense of you can't get a striker, bring in a winger. You can't get a winger, bring in a striker. If it was up to me, I'd love, it's not to say that we haven't got strong ball carriers. Trossard can dribble. Martinelli, when he's on form, is a joy to watch. Saka is Saka. We was waffling about him at the start, but I would like someone who is a strong ball carrier, maybe on the transition, someone that can get us a couple extra yards up the field. That would be amazing. You know me, bro. I think for me, central midfield is the most important area we could address, because I like Jorginho, but I maintain that, take nothing away from Jorginho, I think Mikel Arteta in his heart of hearts probably had to use Jorginho more than he would have liked. Me and you have spoken about Partey at length. We all know everything in relation to Thomas. Declan Rice is Declan Rice. Odegaard's Odegaard. I would like someone that more addresses that left 8 position that is closely aligned with what we lack with Xhaka. Obviously, I would want an upgrade. So I think those are the areas we can improve. And obviously, Mikel Arteta said it mid-season, is that we've got one of the smallest squads. Now, I think we've got 12 players that are truly trusted. I might be exaggerating. If we assume Trossard's on the bench and there's 11 players out there, Trossard's the first to come off the bench. I would extend that to about 14. I kind of want to get to 20. You made a great point about players with X Factor or stuff coming out of the Athletic, and I think that's true. And that's where you're in this difficult scenario, in that you can find players that, have this X Factor without spending great money. Who those players are, I couldn't necessarily tell you, but it's been done. But you do feel like, where you're talking about Isaac or Leao or the guy from Napoli or Rodrigo, Vinicius, is crap amounts of money. So we are in that difficult kind of scenario. If you had to pick, you bring in whatever striker of your dreams or central midfielder of your dreams to partner Declan Rice, what were you going for?
Okay, yeah, putting all feasibility issues aside, I look at Viktor Osimhen and I just think that's someone who can bring you X Factor. And the way he separates in the box, again, we don't have that. The venom in his shot, we don't have that. So in terms of the skills gap, it's bringing something extremely different to what we have. And I also believe that Kai Havertz in a kind of second striker role could really work with Viktor Osimhen. If we're being honest, do I have feasibility issues? Yes, absolutely. But in terms of the someone who is cooked as opposed to as in not physically cooked, as in ready, compared to say a Šeško or whatever. I think Isak's a bit nice, and although I think he gives a bit more on the transition, he feels to me very technically gifted, very secure. I like his finishing, but he just feels a little bit nice. Osman feels like a bully and feels like he would. I sort of want someone who's going to ignore Mikel sometimes. I think we need that a little bit. Someone who is a little bit of a rogue.
Diego Costa-esque.
I don't want an Ivan Toney, but I would love, because Victor Osman works incredibly hard out of possession. It's one of the biggest question marks about him for some reason, and I don't see that whenever I've watched him. I think he works really hard out of possession, but what I love is it feels like he'll break a game open in a different way. So that's probably what I go for in there. Midfield, I'm a lot less secure. I don't know. Okay, let's call it a dream. Jamal Musiala. I mean, again, in terms of carries, in terms of beating your man on the edge of the box, taking risks, shot taking. If you added Musiala and Osimhen, you're in dreamland. We've got a very, very different set of skills in the team. I just can't see Arteta doing that, to be honest. I don't think he adds to. Not saying Musiala is a renegade or sort of I don't know. He's not. He's a lot more disciplined. But to get the best out of him, you'd have to give him the keys, and I don't think Mikel would give both Musiala and Osimhen the keys to just basically do what they want. So I don't know, but I mean, the midfield feels like a weird area because, again, in terms of the skills gap that I was talking about earlier, if you had everyone at their absolute best,
we're kind of comfy in that regard.
You're kind of comfy. Because this is the problem. If you had if everyone was 25 and fully fit, and I appreciate we're doing if my grandmother had wheels stuff here, but if everyone was, you'd have ball progression, a metronome in Jorginho, you'd have physicality, you'd have creativity, you'd have final ball, you'd have carries, you'd have reception, you'd literally have everything.
You'd be winning the treble, man.
You could do everything with that group of midfielders, but we don't. My grandmother. So it's for me that's a lot more dependent on who leaves, and I think Mikel is a lot more likely to go for like a Granit Xhaka, Adam Wharton. I don't think he'll go for Adam Wharton, but someone like that who's a bit more, all-round profile, really solid, just calm sort of presence in the midfield, and maybe put the marquee in attack. But again, even that I do question.
And that's the thing, man. I always ask myself, obviously in an ideal world, we've touched on it. We address out wide, up front, and central midfield. But where I look at those three, and they're all of equal importance, I don't think there's any rights and wrongs. But if there was only, like, for argument's sake, we're only bringing in one signing, I might lean towards central midfield. I just feel defensively, we've got some good options. In the attack, we can talk about missing profiles and different solutions. I think we're kind of okay, even though I want to upgrade. Central midfield, like you said, if everybody was younger and on the face of it, we're all right. I just feel we really need to address that. I feel Declan Rice goes to the next level even more if he has that long-term partner. And I think you'll see an even greater Odegaard. And I just feel we need some long-term options there. We all know Partey and Jorginho are not going to be there forever. I wanted to ask you, I watched another video of yours. It seems like you have a fascination with Marcus Rashford. Why is that?
Well, I think there will be people who just immediately say no to that, and I get that. I do, I get it.
That's why I mentioned him. He's going in the title, man.
Do I not? Do I not have clip? Do I not have any concerns? Obviously not. There's a lot of concerns about Rashford, but the problem is two things. People will say, we're not what's the word? We're not a rehoming center. We're not a
rehab center, essentially.
We're not a rehab center. And I'd say, okay, that's fine. In which case, show me someone in the market with his skill set that we wouldn't have to rehome.
Exactly. He's almost a unicorn in that.
Show me someone with that level of like the ability, the separation he can get, the shots he can get, the transition quality he can give you, how inevitable that cut in on his right and shot is, the height, the age, the Premier League experience, someone who scored 30 goals in England last season. Okay, there are concerns, but I always say this: look, even Declan Rice, there was concerns about his passing and stuff, whatever, and obviously it was.
Which I'm happy I could say I shut them down early doors, but go on. That really annoyed me. But
yeah,
go on.
But there's concerns about every single talent. So for me, I always
very captain.
Exactly. I mean, literally, Ben White, Granit Xhaka, everyone. There's concerns about every single talent. There's always a narrative about them. So for me, I always say choose your problems. And the problem with talent, with Rashford, is not talent. No one is suggesting that. The problem I would suggest is a lot more about off-field stuff. Can he, is he going to put in the work for you? All that sort of stuff. And I would say, look, that is of course a concern. But the stuff I read of Rashford when he first came through, his like articles in the Players Tribune, all this sort of stuff, I think he's in the wrong environment. I think he's in the wrong environment for him. Imagine trying to carry that circus at United for 10 years. It's just, and being the number 10 and being the homegrown boy, like it's gonna have a massive weight on you. He needs a fresh start. And people will say there's other talents out there. And I go, okay, absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. Who are they? And then there's a bit of stuttering and they go, well, Isak. I'm like, okay, that's a very different profile. It's a very, very different profile. If you're trying to add someone who can play on the left, give us that X factor, can shoot from distance, can be can be a target for us, can be someone who I think, technically in terms of his passing as well. You see that pass in the FA Cup final. Like, he's got the technical quality to play for Arsenal. I suppose what I'd say is this. You might be watching this and saying absolutely not to Rashford. I'd like you to come up with 5 other names who fill that gap for us so emphatically. I don't think you can. And secondly,
got your homework, people.
Yeah, please do. And who's proved it at that level. And secondly, who are the players in the Premier League that you, the night before the game, go, for me,
someone's in for a long day.
It's De Bruyne, Salah, and Rashford. So why wouldn't you go and get that talent? I don't understand.
Do you think the pros... Go on.
If it's available, basically.
Do you think the pros to Marcus Rashford outweigh the cons, though? Because I agree with a lot of what you say. I think, especially what you said about his environment. I think with a new environment, he could do stuff. I think the main thing that attracts me to Rashford is actually the biggest thing I'm concerned about is Mikel Arteta. The track record with young players that need a bit of love is immaculate. But he's not Jesus. Forgive me for the blasphemy. He will get things. It's not even that he'll get things wrong. He can't save everyone. Where I look at Rashford, I love him, on the transition, the technical ability. I just have concerns around his decision making at 26 years of age. With all this wealth of experience, you don't seem like your footballing IQ is really improved. And I think obviously Mikel Arteta can change that. And not just Arteta, the coaching staff. You look at a lot of our coaching staff, like Declan Rice, it goes under the radar. But when he speaks about the assistants, he speaks about body language, how you receive the ball, the sort of angles you open up. So I guess you could learn that. But at this stage in his game, is Marcus Rashford going to do that? And I'd say with Marcus, one thing, as much as I love him, because I did a video on this, even when he's had those strong goal scoring seasons, I have not necessarily been convinced. Like, it feels like great form from him, but I don't feel there's been too much of a difference. Then you factor in things that are irrelevant to us as fans, his wages and all of that jazz. For you, would the pros outweigh the cons? Obviously, the underlying in one pro would be, if it works, nobody cares, a bit like Kai Havertz. But surely it could be seen as a risk. And he'd probably be our top earner or one of them.
Yeah, there's the wages conversation. I think there's like 7 players at Bayern on over 300k.
That's a way we're going to have to be able to deal with if we want to be a big club. Yep.
We want to be a big club. By the way, we're going to have to put Saka on over 300k at one point.
In the next 6 months, he's going to be on something big. He's not
be on something like that. So, I think this idea that we're just going to be, we're going to have to pay if we all sat there in April and wanted to beat Bayern. So if we want to do that, we're going to have to act like them a little bit in certain areas. We can be ourselves and do things the right way and be a good club, but we're going to have to do certain things. Look, you can make an argument against Rashford, and look, am I not concerned at all? No, but I will go back to the Newcastle game, the 4-1 at home, and I think it was the Havertz goal or the Martinelli goal? It was either a Martinelli assist for Havertz or a Havertz assist for Martinelli. I can't remember which way around.
I think Havertz might have scored, with the Jorginho to Martinelli and then Kai. You referring to that?
There's the one where Havertz cuts it back and is it Havertz cuts it back or Martinelli cuts it back and someone's attacking the 6-yard box?
We're scoring too many goals, man, because we'll have to look back in time. I kind of think I know what you alluded to.
Where there's 2 Arsenal players, the ball's running away from one, and he literally just cuts it back to the 6-yard box, and the other's crashing the 6-yard box and scores.
It might have been Kai who scored, and Martinelli set him up. I don't know, man. We're scoring too many. Arteta did too well, man.
Go watch those.
Yeah, man.
Those types of goals, the way we crash the box, shows me there is a structure in place. Once that ball's coming back in, Martinelli knows my job here is to, or whoever it is to crash the box, is to crash the 6-yard box. If you look at how, for example, a lot of last season, the way we were crashing the box when the ball was wide, you'd have 2 men in the pocket, 1 man pushing the line, and 2 wide.
And then a late runner into the box as well.
And the late runners. If you look at the structure, Mikel, look, whether Rashford takes these instructions on or not, or can, is irrelevant. But would Mikel put Rashford into a structure where he'd be saying, look, when the ball is here, I need my left winger here, tucked in, ready to counter press or ready to go out wide. When we're in possession here, I need you high and wide as possible to stretch the defense. When we're close to the box, I want you on the edge of the box, ready for the cutback, or whatever it might be. I know Mikel could teach those automatisms because we've seen it with Saka. We've seen it. We've seen it with Saka. We've seen it with Martinelli. We've seen it with
all
Havertz,
over the squad.
We've seen it with everyone. So he would put him into a structure. Whether he responds to that structure and that gets the best out of him, I don't know. But the idea that Rashford would just be sort of wandering around, like sort of picking up bits of grass or something and just sort of like not helping anyone, I don't get that at all. I also, I think the character stuff does get massively overblown. And to be honest, like I do.
He's got a strong character. It pees me off. Like, people can't deal with the pressure that he's been dealing with and the fact that he's flagged. Obviously, you're going to crack at some point. I mean, people could talk about his attitude, and I guess there's three sides to every story, and there's things Rashford could do. But that's one thing that, for obvious reasons, as you could imagine, that's one thing that's always annoyed me about Marcus Rashford, or comments surrounding him. That's one thing I'm not concerned about.
I'm sorry, but and I would defer to you on this. A lot of that feels like it's got undertones. To be honest,
100%.
I don't
100% it does.
Feel that can be, you know what I mean?
Ridiculous.
So it's the same with Saka. It's just, we know how young black men are treated in this country, and like how the media. We've literally seen it this week with Bukayo Saka. How could you hate this man?
That's what's crazy about Saka. It's like, he's such a good lad. Like, I could understand it, not understand it, but I get why it might be Sterling. He's got the tattoos, he kind of fits the image. But the shocking thing Saka has done is falling off an inflatable toy swimming. Like, I don't get it. Like, how can you hate him? Like,
it's mad. And that's, look, Rashford went out partying and whatever. Fine. Yeah, fine. But he's
sunken place. We've all been there.
Exactly.
I'm not sure on the girls he's getting with, but
me and you before our last stream. So, look, I think
exactly.
Are there no concerns? Obviously not. But I would also suggest people to look at Ten Hag's system in terms of the distances he's asked to cover, loads of stuff. I don't want to go too far. I've said my piece on this, but I just think people sort of immediately say no rather than looking at it in the other way around and saying, well, that's a brilliant player. What are the problems here? Because there's problems with everyone, and can I solve them? And I think when you go through each problem, the wages, the attitude, the adaptability, etc., you start to find little, well, I think we'd be all right. Well, I think we'd be all right. So I don't know. Do I think it will happen? No, absolutely not. But
neither do I, man. Neither do I, because I can't see them. I mean, you never know. People, the bigger clubs have been dealing with each other, but they're going to want a decent transfer fee. And when you factor in all this stuff, I think there's an admiration for Rashford. I think there's a willingness to get it done if it could happen, but who knows, really and truly, man. What do you make of, obviously, whether we signed them or not, but we've been linked with Xavi Simons and Xerxes. What do you make of them two?
Xerxes, I haven't watched enough. I don't know. From what I do know, as in, the comps I've seen of him, he looks a lot more like a link-uppy type number 9, which doesn't feel right. I would suggest, well, two things. Firstly, his agent's Kia Jarabchian, so no chance. Secondly, I do feel sometimes what happens is, I've said this before in a couple of pods, Arsenal need to know what is going on with every single number 9 in the world. With every big number 9 on the move for, let's say, more than £30 million this summer. We need to know. We need to know where Tony's going. Because we need to know. So, for example, with Nketiah, okay, well, Brentford aren't going to sell, so they're not taking Nketiah. You need to know what's going on in the market. So what will happen is Arsenal will contact an agent and they'll say, "What's the situation with Xerxes? We're just inquiring about the player." Someone will send a response back. We're waiting to hear from this, that, or the other. That agent then texts his mate saying, just had a text from Arsenal. Boom, it's straight out in the media. Arsenal are interested in Xerxes. Not necessarily.
Mr. Romano's onto it. And then, we're talking about it here.
Exactly. So, but on the player, I don't particularly know him. Simons, again, he gives me like, I don't quite know what he is. He's very technically gifted, clearly. I love him on the ball. He's a bit more of a carrier than something we have. Has he got the end product? I don't know.
He's a work in progress, without a doubt.
He feels like a very floaty, sort of behind, sort of number 10-y, out wide. Do you know what he feels like? He feels like a very Arsene Wenger sort of 2010 player. I don't quite. He could sort of play in a number of positions. I don't really know what he is. Good player, obviously, but am I crying out for Xavi Simons this summer? No,
It's a shiny new toy, man. I would take Xavi Simons because I think kind of what we've been saying and been the theme of Mikel Arteta. He's young, he's impressionable, he's versatile. He's at that kind of sweet spot where you're experienced and you've picked up a lot of stuff. And I'm sure you've got bad habits, but you haven't been in the game a long time to have had ingrained bad habits that Mikel Arteta could coach out of him. Obviously, you can play as a 10, play as an 8, or play as out wide. But as you said, you're not necessarily a specialist yet. And I don't want to judge anyone on international football because even someone like Foden, who was player of the year or whatever, struggled for England last night. It's a completely different dynamic. But he was quite anonymous for the Netherlands. And whether PSG sell him is a completely different thing. Would you go back in for Gyökeres?
Maybe. I look at the career trajectory, and maybe this is unfair, but it just stinks to me of. Do you remember? It just stinks of Michu. A little
That's
bit
harsh, man. That's very harsh.
As in not the talent, as in the season he's had.
Yeah.
Of that sort of incredible, what was it, 12-13 season he had at Swansea. It will never quite hit those heights. Look, again, to be honest, have I watched him loads and loads and loads? I've seen the comps everyone else has seen. I've had a look at him on Wide Scout. He looks pretty strong. Looks like a nice centre forward. My concerns about him are more translation wise. I just always struggle with the Portuguese leagues in terms of forwards. I just think I look at the sort of the track record over the years, and there's a few flashpoints. Obviously, you have Ronaldo, whatever, but like a lot of forwards who come from the Portuguese league, and I've always felt there's translation issues. Darwin Núñez, you maybe get your moments here and there, but in 20 years of sort of me following football, every forward who's come from the Portuguese leagues and gone to your Villas, your Chelseas, your whatever it might be, I just don't feel I've ever quite landed. I feel like I don't know. I need to speak to someone who watches the league a bit better than me, but for me, that always feels like there's translation issues. That I would say in terms of tiers of translation, if we put it that way, it feels like Bundesliga players generally do okay in the Premier League, or there's a higher hit rate. Then it's probably I feel like Ligue 1 does quite well, French league. I feel like La Liga, there's sort of somewhere, then you're heading down into the sort of the Portuguese leagues and whatever. It just feels like it's not. I don't know. I just do have concerns about. If I'm honest, I haven't watched him enough to be a world expert on him. That's just my concern.
I think he's overpriced in a sense of I just think he's out of Arsenal a budget, but I just don't deem him worth that. I think the general play is spot on. I think all the other facets Mikel Arteta wants from a striker is great. I do think you'll be able to translate because I know it's the Championship, but you've done it in the Championship, you've done it in Portugal, so there's a bit of adaptability in that regards. I just feel when you've scored the amount of goals he scored, like he's probably the most informed striker, give or take, in Europe. Probably the summer signing, arguably, of last year. Obviously, if you score 20 and not necessarily what he's done now, then you would have still had a good season. But I just feel when you set them heights, nothing you do, to me anyways, is going to quite be there. And I think there's an admiration for him. You hear Arsenal have been watching, Sporting Lisbon on a regular basis. That could be with your boy and my guy, Diamande. We just happened to see Gyökeres. But I'm prepared to, and so no one can misunderstand me, I would love a striker this summer. But I'm prepared to say, do you know what? If you bring me a winger, central midfield, we hear Mikel Arteta wants a left back, and any other areas that Mikel deems that he needs to go to keep this team moving, I would leave the striker stuff for another year. Again, I don't know the dynamics of Sesko next year because you'd imagine he's going to keep scoring goals. They've removed his release clause and put a gentleman's agreement. As me and you both know, in business, gentleman's agreement means nothing if it's not in cold-hearted writing. So the dynamics have shifted there. I want to ask you, I've got 2 more questions for you before I let you get out of here. Yeah, we've been linked with Onana now. Equally, he's someone we're always linked with. There are some rumors that distance us from him, and then there's some that are saying we're talking. Is he someone that maybe excites you, a bit of a strong word, but is he a midfielder you think could bring something to us?
Yeah, I've been watching him a little bit recently, obviously with the links coming out. I would suggest people go and watch him for Lille because he had a very different role there. And when you watch him for Lille, you start going, okay, there's something here. There's something a little bit more. He's a bit more of a glider on the ball than maybe we have. Obviously, the physicality is really special. Do you know, what I was really impressed with when we played them is it felt like he had a really good connection with the 9, with obviously Calvert-Lewin. He's a bit more of a kind of battering ram 9, so I don't know whether that's quite the same. You get the same with Havertz. He managed to find those passes and get those passes off to Calvert-Lewin from the midfield, and the sort of I think Wisecout calls it the interaction with the forward is really good in terms of that side of his game. In terms of the price, I mean, if we're looking around and we're going, I would suggest people look at Yusuf Fofana. Again, it depends if Thomas Partey leaves. I think that's a really nice replacement. You sort of gain stuff and lose stuff, I feel, with him.
15 to 20 million euros for him.
It's really good. Onana, I don't. It's not going to get everyone off their feet. I don't feel, but I feel if Partey goes and you go and sign Amadou Onana to replace him, I think that's pretty good business, to be honest. I think there are concerns about him, but a lot of them I think come down to what he looks like in terms of he's just a big man who plays for Everton. So people go, oh, he's just not going to be good on the ball. No, firstly,
he's quite underrated on the ball, if I'm honest. It's not amazing, but it's all right.
He's a lot more technical. He also he's a carrier as well. He can carry anyway. He did a lot.
22. He doesn't look it, but 22 years of age. A lot of longevity there.
And the size, like when someone's that big and also that techie, you know Mikel's going to like them. So
imagine him and Rice in the middle of the park together. It's two bullies. I mean, you'd imagine Rice would in that scenario. You'd imagine Rice would continue kind of being the 8, but you can't rule out Rice also being a 6 and letting Onana go. And that's an angle I think Mikel Arteta long term wants Arsenal's midfield. I think we have to kind of get away from specialists. Of course, people could specialize at one thing than the other, but I think we need I think Mikel Arteta wants multifunctional midfielders. There might be 10 games, 5 of them. Declan Rice is this adventurous 8, 5 of them he's a 6. So I just want the midfield addressed, bro. Like you can tell, like I just want midfield addressed.
I can see.
I need it addressed this summer.
From what I'm told, let's put it that way. I think the Onana stuff is a lot from the Everton side of things.
100%
is what I hear. So
it's a lot of creative journalism, man. Come on, we've been, like you said, we've been linked with him from his days at Lille. We evidently need a midfielder. Everton, it seems like they need to sell, and obviously, it's there's nothing really from a footballing point of view beyond the Euros for journalists to talk about. So how else are they going to get the clicks, man? The game is the game. My last thing to you would be just to quickly touch on potential outgoings. Now, I know you've been passionate on getting a decent fee for Aaron Ramsdale. There's been 40 to 50 million asking price shouts. Apparently, Smith Rowe's got an asking price of 30 million. Apparently, Reece Nelson's asked to leave and he's available for about 20. And Eddie Nketiah, 30 million price tag still on his head. What do you feel about those prices? Do you think they're fair value? And obviously, we're not going to sell everybody and bring everybody in, but people say Edu needs to do well in terms of sales.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big thing. But look, I feel they're all fair prices. I think, you know, I saw, who was it? Who were Chelsea trying to sell recently? It was, it was Tottenham trying to sell Emerson Royale. It was like 30 million.
Madness, isn't it?
And I was like, look, if we're who knows where this information is coming from? Let's assume it's coming from the club in terms of the numbers they're putting around. If they want that information to be out there, good. I'd be sticking a £60 million price tag on Smith Rowe. Like, you know, like who knows? Like, I think we just have to. I think we'll have to. My main feeling about sales,
cowboy builders,
we have to hold our nerve. We do have to hold our nerve, and I don't want us to be selling, you know, Reece Nelson in 4 days' time for £15 million. Hold off, because this is a talent. If Dougie Friedman is interested, the guy who's picked up Adam Wharton, the guy who's picked up Tyrek Mitchell, the guy who's picked up Eze, Elise, well, maybe he hasn't, but you know, he's been involved in that project. That tells you something about the talent there. Reece Nelson has a lot of talent. We haven't seen it yet at Arsenal, but he was rated on the same level as Jadon Sancho at one point. So let's hold our nerve with Reece. I'm not saying we have to wait and hold out for £40 million, but don't sell him on the cheap. Just hold our nerve a little bit. We might have to be sat here in a month, you know, sort of end of August, and a couple of those players haven't quite gone. Everyone's going, what's going on? And those sales happen quite quickly. But if that means we get good fees for them, I'm okay with that.
I'm with you with that, and that's something I want to see. You know, again, it goes, we'll be going south with it, but you know, where you look back at our academy, we're going to miss certain players, but we could look to mimic Chelsea and City, in my opinion, in that players that evidently, for one reason or another, whether they're good enough or not, don't reach our first team, are sold for decent profit. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. With you know, I'm a big fan of Smith Rowe. Ramsdale would love you to stay, but we're at Eddie. You've done very well to get to this point, but the way we're going, it is where it is. Nelson's in particular to me because I have so many unanswered questions for him from the Arsene Wenger inside me. I think you need to go and play first team football, and it would be romantic to see that, because I think we've only scratched the surface for your potential. Now, if I look at the Jose Mourinho in me, the side that doesn't really necessarily care about you personally, listen, you're an asset. As you just said, you're an asset. If these teams are interested in you, you could be like a penny stock. You could be like Bitcoin. You know, they sell you for pennies, and then you're amazing. I think you and Ramsdale in particular are of interest to me because you've signed new contracts, and we're actually in a position of strength. Now, evidently, Arteta knows they probably want to move on, but it's probably the onus is probably on Nelson and Ramsdale's camp to kind of force the issue in that regard. And as you kind of said, we need to hold our nerves. And, you know, where Ramsdale, for obvious reasons, concerned, and Nelson, I don't want you lot to leave until we bring someone in, or at least there's an assurance that somebody's walking in the door. But it will be interesting. I know we can't sell all of our homegrown players, but we're going to have to see. My last question, because I don't want this to be forgotten. You was going to say something about Trossard, bro. I need to hear this. I can't let you get away without that. Okay. I need to hear this, man.
Okay. So this is something I want to write in a video today. As part of us becoming, you know, trying to become an elite club again, are there certain decisions that we're going to have to make that are different? We're thinking in different ways. Now, of course, so I want to put my point out here very clearly, so people don't get me wrong.
They're still going to get you wrong.
They're still getting me wrong. That's fine. That's it's football. I wrote on Twitter yesterday that I was concerned about Kivior, and I just worried that he just seemed a little bit mentally fatigued. And then one Arteta outer guy quote tweeted it, and then everyone was going, "Bro thinks he's a psychologist. Bro, all these Arteta in guys, they're just chatting waffle." Because I said he looks a bit.
This is why I love Twitter, but I hate it, man.
A bit fatigued to me. That's literally all I said. It's incredible. It's genuinely like professional dads. Mad. Anyway, so your people will get me wrong, but I there's a very small set of outcomes where I go and sell Trossard, but there will be some people who would say, you absolutely don't sell Trossard this summer. And I would say, okay, is this part of the mentality shift that we need to do? Because say we go out and we raise the floor of the squad. Again, let's use the scenario that hasn't happened so we don't get attached to outcomes or whatever. Let's say we went and got Šeško and Leao this summer. We did that. And we sold Eddie and Reece, and there's no offers for Jesus. An offer comes in for Leandro Trossard for £25 million. Do you take it?
Yes and no. I would say yes because he's 29. No, because I think we need depth, man. We really played a dangerous game.
At that point, you've got Šeško, Leao, Saka, Havertz, Martinelli, Jesus, and Trossard is your seventh attacker. We, of course, as Arsenal fans, are going to say, but he was so clutch for us last season. We can't be selling that asset. We've raised the floor of the squad. You're basically banking on the idea that Trossard is going to do the exact same thing again next season. Is going to overperform. I think he overperformed his XG by like literally double, but going overperform in the same way. Going to be as clutch as he is. We spend a lot of time being like, we need to sell at the right time in the same way that the Madrids and the Cities.
That's why I said yes.
And we never do. We never go and sell the assets that make us feel like, oh, this isn't quite right. But everyone who says, don't sell Trossard. Okay, brilliant. Do you want to start him then? No. Okay.
He's not expendable, I'd say that much.
I probably wouldn't do it, but I do think there are conversations where we're going to have to start thinking a different way and thinking about, for example, what would Bayern do with a Smith Rowe this summer?
He'd be gone probably.
What would Madrid do with a... And we can't just go, well, let's just act like Bayern and Madrid. But I think having that kind of North Star of going, that's the way they act. Do we want to go there as a club, or do we want to be the sort of second tier of clubs forever? And if we want to get there, how do we get there? These types of conversations about talent for the Smith Rowe, there's so many people who are so attached to the Smith Rowe project, and I get that. I completely
myself, my heart's bleeding listening to this. I can't lie.
100%. But just ask yourself, what would happen at the club we tried to beat in April? What would happen?
Well, he probably would. Well, to be fair, he probably wouldn't have these injuries because they, got some questionable medical stuff. People sign for them for 2 minutes and then wham and whatnot. But it's all right. But you are right though, man. Like again, you have to have uncomfortable conversations. And I don't feel the minutes. Not even it's Smith Rowe's case, but the minute someone has a bit of woeful form, but we have to just cast them off. But the way we're going, we can't carry passengers. So you look at Smith Rowe, Ramsdale. Who else is there? Zinchenko, potentially Gabriel Jesus, Thomas Partey, players that were held in high regards and still are, or players that were on the first names on the team sheet. They're expendable. Unfortunately, that's life. And I don't ever want to get into this scenario. But if we get to where Arsenal would be, which is Madrid level and all these things, there might be one day where you're looking at Saka, Odegaard, or even Saliba and saying, could you upgrade? Or if their form is shaky, are they on the bench? But that's a long way to go, man. But you know what? You're not wrong with the Trossard thing. That's why I said yes and no. I'd say yes, because at the end of the day, I don't want to be ageist because I think people do too much, but he's 29. You might not have another opportunity to get rid. So that would be that.
Last big contract you can get.
Exactly. That's a decision to make. So that would probably be what sways me. But a part of me would say keep him just because it's a long season. He is one of our most adaptable kind of players in filling over the front three. But I would say to close up is this is why I'm happy I'm not Mikel Arteta, because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's a million sort of ways things could pan out, and ultimately people just don't care. They just want to see you win. So hopefully we address what we need to address. But I'm looking forward to seeing what's going on in the summer. What videos and content you got to come out? You alluded to a Stan Kroenke piece. You alluded to something else as well, man.
Yeah, I don't quite know this bit, but I want to put something together about this kind of. It's a kind of mentality shift. It's a new way. I think we need to view a lot of these conversations. You know, if we want to be an elite club, we're gonna have to change our, I think, perspective on a couple of stuff. So I don't quite know how that's going to turn out. Well, that'll be out soon. And yeah, you can find me on the Cannon Podcast. Find me on X at AM on Football.
He's everywhere, man. There's about 3 YouTube channels, man. You know, he's got the live, the different not live, the different not in general, which obviously is the bread and butter. And then you've got the Cannon Podcast with George and Bav. So yeah, man. And he's always here, and I appreciate you for your time, man. So I'm sure you lot have disagreed and agreed with what a lot we've said. So yeah, make sure you're subscribing to the platforms, you're liking, you're commenting, and all of the good things. Alex, let love and leave you, man. Appreciative for you tuning in, man. It's always a pleasure, my boy.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
Come on, my guy. Peace.